So it's very amazing, and it shows that this is a very good beginning for these kind of sessions as you wish to grow global and not working locally. So I'm very impressed to read this session. I am Wilson Saviyumva. I'm Rwandan by nationality, and I am a nurse by profession. Currently, I'm working with the NGO called JAPAIGO in its project. The JAPAIGO is Johns Hopkins University affiliate, and I'm working with its project called USAID RISE as a technical coordinator. So I'd like to know if Madam Adenik Ajibodu joined. Are you there? Adenik?
Yes, I've joined already.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Yes.
I am also introducing you as our today's moderator. I'm also introducing Adebsora Okole as our president and the founder of the operating room global. Introducing to our speaker of today, Dr. Robert Masson, and would like to welcome Adenike to introduce more Dr. Robert before he continues with the presentation. Thank you very much and welcome all.
Thank you.
Adenike, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, everyone. Once again, I welcome everyone to today's meeting. Joining us today, we have Dr. Robert Masson. He's a neurosurgeon. He's an internationally recognized neurosurgeon, specializing in minimally invasive spine surgery and sports spine medicine, holding over a dozen patents in his name. His passion is lean, exceptional surgical performance and teams. He has performed over 13,000 procedures and trained over 1,000 surgeons worldwide. Dr. Masson is the world leader and inventor of the IMAS 360 lumbar reconstruction platform and an international destination for cervical arthroplasty. He treats a broad variety of elite professional athletes and lifelong weekend warriors, recognizing the importance of spine surgery to highly functional people who have lost their functional capabilities in the midst of a spine health crisis. He's an inventor himself in spine implants and procedures, the founder of Florida's first JCAHO Spine Center of Excellence, and the founder of outpatient surgery facilities in Orlando and Park City. He has also served on advisory boards of various microsurgical systems, stem cell research, radiological software, orthobiologics, and sports injury treatment and prevention. In addition to all this, he has also developed and educated and influenced products for groups such as Soforma Danek, the Pew Synthesis Spine, a Johnson & Johnson company, Sentinel Spine, and Bideman Motec. He is also the founder and CEO of Expanded Existence, a mixed reality tech company focused on surgical performance, logistics, and optimization. He is also a proud father of 5 and a lifelong athlete, having played football in college. Since then, he enjoys multiple sports, including tennis, basketball, prototype racing, and snow skiing. He was second in the 2019 Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona in the Le Mans Prototype 2 class with his oldest son, Kyle. He also commits to pushing his personal limits and his hobbies, including aviation, scuba diving, mountain climbing, and mountain biking. This is the person we have in our midst today. Once again, I would enjoy all of us to please welcome Dr. Robert Masson into our midst. Welcome very much, sir.
Thank you so much. Very, very kind and humbling introduction. It's a privilege to be here. I actually privately reached out to Adebusola a few months ago because I happened upon your organization online, and immediately things about what we were trying to do in surgery resonated with me, and somehow I wanted to be involved and have an impact on your group and your global initiatives. And I think you'll find that a lot of what we do organically in our own little universe is really aligned with what you're all trying to accomplish in all of our little ways. And to the point, I love the fact that this is a large, diverse group because it's enigmatic for what's most important, in my opinion, in the future of surgical healthcare, which is improved team performance, improved team building, and team support. Historically, it's been a little fractionated, and everybody comes from their own isolated position. And I see huge opportunity to align all the members of the surgical team with better technology, with a variety of software, artificial intelligence, mixed reality solutions. There's a lot of exciting stuff coming. And so with that, I really think this is an important group to listen to and hear back from as we continue to evolve our products and our solutions for surgical healthcare. And so I thank you all for being here, and I'll do the best I can to give you some background, the inspiration, why it all makes sense, why it all came together, how it's all exactly synchronous with my entire life journey. And hopefully by the end of it, it'll make sense and stimulate some ideas. And in the long run, we can all continue to aim towards the same goals, which is to, globalize best of class surgical healthcare in every way possible. It's a daunting task, but it's definitely an achievable task. Can I have the screen share? So, okay, let me see. Can everybody see this?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
we
we
can.
can.
Okay.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me go here, back to the beginning, go here. All right, so, the fundamental starting point of this topic is building the surgical metaverse. And there's a lot of conversation in the media about all of the new technologies and information technologies, whether it's through mixed reality, augmented reality, visualization, or virtual reality, the difference between the two, artificial intelligence, the good and the bad. There's a lot of fear and a lot of security. We'll dive into that a little bit. At the end of the day, though, I think it represents something bigger than that. I think there are conversations in industry about digital twins, and to date, nobody's really talked about the value of a visual digital twin in the surgical setting. And the solutions that are in development worldwide using this technology are typically about navigation capabilities or putting screws in bone in certain places and seeing x-rays and things like that. I'll explain how we got to where we are now and where we're going to go, but we saw it very differently. And it really came as a result of my neurosurgical career and ultimately my focus on spine surgery. So with that being said, why is this not advancing? Okay, there we go. You know, it was already alluded to. I for better or worse, am very much an explorer. I like to do a lot of explorational things. I always have. You know, my lifestyle growing up, for a variety of reasons, I had to play sports in order to go to college. That's how I paid for college. It's how I paid for medical school. I played American football in college. I can't admit there are people waiting, and somehow I can't admit them. Can somebody let in the people that are coming?
Yes, we do that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they're going to continue to come in. So anyway, in doing that, I've always established myself relative to my own personal stability and growth and development in physical stress, physical performance, physical execution. And that's been incredibly important to every aspect of the journey, and why at this point, even at 60 years old, I still live that lifestyle, whether it's in my personal space with my family or in my surgical space, where I'm exceptionally purpose-driven and always seeking for better. I'm never of the opinion that me or my environment or my team have all the best tools available to give people their best clinical outcomes. So I'm always striving for more. You know, my original journey wasn't healthcare. My grandfather was a military pilot and a test pilot, and one of the educators to a lot of the original astronauts. And I grew up fantasizing about being an astronaut. And all of my education was built around engineering and ultimately medical and medical science and a little bit of military, which in my mind was going to get me on the space shuttle. But late in that medical school journey, the Space Shuttle Challenger had a massive crisis. And it wasn't clear what the shuttle program was going to look like. And I was doing research in neurosurgery and stem cell biology, which I was going to study in zero gravity environments to see how brain cells and spinal cord cells migrate, grow, and organize in zero gravity environments compared to gravitational environments, to learn more about the way nerve cells grow. And I was invited to apply for training in neurosurgery. That was a crossroads in my life. And 35 years later, you know, I've never looked back. It's been an incredible career. And, you know, sometimes life throws you curveballs and you jump. That chairman who invited me to neurosurgery, his name was Professor Dr. Albert Roden. For anyone who knows much about cranial neurosurgery, he's considered the father of major microneurosurgical anatomy of the brain. And he's developed all of the exquisite data behind every approach, every crevice, every angle of any method for cerebrovascular and skull-based surgery. And in fact, during my training, I ended it up with a cerebrovascular and skull-based fellowship and was extremely focused on high-level cranial neurosurgery. And his quote of all time is well known: "The brain is the crown jewel of creation and evolution." In a strange way, as a big fan of neuroscience, I always extended this as well to artificial intelligence versus biological intelligence. And that's going to have an impact on how we connect the two relative to safety, security, and how we engage. I do think autonomous AI can be dangerous if I see it more as a expansion of human intelligence and a way of augmenting our capabilities. But it has to be like every other incredibly powerful tool that neurosurgeons are very familiar with. We have to learn the tool. We have to learn how to use the tool. We have to learn how to master the tool. But we still guide the tool. The tool doesn't guide us. And I am very biased in that perspective. Dr. Roden on the left, Dr. Jürgen Harms is considered one of the fathers of major modern spine reconstruction. He was also an inspiration and influence to me out of Germany. And the two of them both made me realize that brain surgery was being done at a certain level with advanced microsurgery and incredible attention to detail and accuracy and precision. And yet spinal reconstruction was still done in a very old-fashioned, large, disabling, destructive, tissue destructive kind of way. And in a lot of ways, it wasn't conducive to functional recovery. And again, with a strong bias towards extreme personal physical performance for life, my take on spine surgery at that point became one of taking people from a spine health crisis and try to restore them to spine health functionality and capability. I never saw it as a disease. I saw it as something that happened that best of class surgery could reverse. And that's always been the founding principle of how I've approached spine surgery. The IMAS procedure was a microsurgical front and back reconstructive approach that I started with in 1999, at a time where minimally invasive spine surgery was really only considered surgery through a tube to take out a herniated disc or to open up the tunnel of the spine. But very few people on the planet had even conceived of least invasive spine surgery at that point. And that's why we've accumulated so many cases, because using skull-based and cerebrovascular approach principles in cranial neurosurgery and applying them to the spine really immediately gave me opportunity to minimize tissue trauma, muscular trauma, to rethink the philosophy of how we preserve all of the functional pieces of the spinal architecture in a way where we could rebuild it without necessarily sacrificing future function. That picture on the left here is a two-level front and back spine reconstruction done in 2007. And that included an inner body graft in the front, 6 screws in the back, and basically in a couple of hours of surgery with minimal blood loss. And here we are in 2023, and it's still considered next generational kind of surgery, but we've been doing a form of this since the late 90s. So this is kind of an example of how the value of that push and the value of always striving for more. I'm a big fan of racing, as mentioned, and the racing really was the inspiration and the basis, the canvas by which ultimately we came up with solutions for improving surgical healthcare. When you look at Formula One or any advanced motorsports, and obviously that's a very, very privileged sport worldwide, but it's also the most widely watched sport on the planet. So I think it resonates really well. I expect healthcare to work at the same level as F1, and I think it's tragic that it really isn't. And the same attention and resource and expertise and excellence doesn't get applied to surgical healthcare that it does into motorsports. But on the other hand, I saw a huge opportunity to absorb and learn from the best of industry and technology in a way that I could translate back to surgery. And when I jumped into that racing journey with one of my sons, I did it and justified it and rationalized it solely from the perspective that it was going to teach me a lot of things that I could ultimately bring back to surgical healthcare, knowing that I was already chasing these limitless destinations, and one of the most famous F1 drivers who actually died racing in F1, this is his quote: "On a given day, on a given circumstance, you think you have a limit, you go for this limit, you touch this limit, and you think, okay, this is the limit. As soon as you touch this limit, something happens, and you can suddenly go a little bit further." Nothing in my mind on this planet is as applicable to this quote more than surgical healthcare. So thank you all for your role in continuing to push surgical healthcare and take care of people, but also to have enough of an open mind to come together and learn and message and articulate needs and opportunities for growth and development, because I think there isn't enough of that, and we can all, raise the sea, if you will, in surgical healthcare. And this is my standard for raising that sea. In this slide really represents the sudden arrival of a new technology in the 20 teens, all of a sudden augmented reality came around, and a couple of my partners on the software company we're forming came to me and said, "Hey, Robert, we've got this amazing new technology. Microsoft has developed this HoloLens 1. It allows you to see holograms, but still see real space. And we think there might be applications in healthcare. Will you look at it and see, if we can help?" And at the time, we really hadn't even come close to understanding what problem we would try to tackle with it. It was really just this technology. And so we had a lot of sit downs and a lot of conversations about all the theoretical things that a technology like this could do in surgical healthcare. Most of the ideas that were being circulated in industry at that point were built around the surgeon, like so many innovation and technology, not the surgical team and not all the team members and not the environment of the sterile field. When you look at the architecture of information technology in healthcare, it's typically a top-down model where it starts institutionally and in companies and major organizations, and then it flows down through the facility. But the one place that has always been the limit is the sterile field of the OR, because you obviously can't bring an active data interface into the sterile field, right? Well, when we saw Microsoft had this ability to demonstrate all of these hand prompts to manipulate an infinite database, all of a sudden it started to resonate that we might have a tool that potentially we can engage digital information, digital management, and ultimately a digital surgical ecosystem within the sterile field that could be used to the benefit of not the surgeon directly, but the surgeon indirectly by means of something far more important and simple that really hasn't evolved in 100 years. And, so at the same time, it became obvious regionally, nationally, internationally, globally, surgical care at large is widely underserved. And, surgeries has become increasingly complex. There are more tools, more equipment pieces, more brands than ever. Supply is restricted. The way tools and solutions and implant systems are put together isn't well organized, and it isn't done in a lean way where distribution is affordable and available. And needless to say, access to care is not equitable. It's, these are very expensive systems to use. They're expensive systems to transport, and nobody's really made any legitimate effort in improving the efficiency of all of these things and the simplicity and the leanness. Simultaneously into the pandemic, staff turnover, burnout, people traveling from facility to facility, the economics of staff management have changed. That's in developed countries. Needless to say, less developed countries, it's harder than ever. And so we just saw a lot of opportunity simultaneous to build a system that could tackle a lot of these problems, built around a fundamental problem of disorganization. And the concept of disorganization can really be threatening to people. Everybody personally is going to be defensive of that. No, we're extremely well organized. We do everything the best we possibly can. And that is correct almost always, but that doesn't mean they were given the best tools to be best organized. And so we saw an opportunity to bring early 20th century capabilities to the 21st century with some of these tools. And in doing so, just transcend a whole different level of what it means to be organized. And in general, medical errors are, very expensive to, countries, to institutions, to facilities, to teams, shortage of workers, shortage of supplies, everything else. So all in all, I think we really can't, there we go, go out. When you look at data, hospitals are carrying out fewer operations than before the pandemic. In the UK, 7.4 million patients are backed up. Before the pandemic, it was 3.7 to 4 million. We're on waiting lists. it's double that, and they're not making any dent on this backlog of surgeries. And a lot of it is a direct consequence of surgical discoordination, which would help all of these problems. Needless to say, the cost of inefficiency and the ripple effect on distribution of supplies, equipment, everything else. So with that being said, this is most people's current method of organization of a surgical field. A pref card, it can be a scribbled one, it can be a digital printout, it can be a 14-page digital map off of a computer, Word document that lists things. But, for anybody who likes to use Google Maps on their cell phone, it's a lot easier to look at a picture that shows you where to go than it is to read a paragraph and try to figure out what it meant while you're doing the driving at the same exact time. Well, guess what? We all do surgery at the same exact time. So it's pretty hard within the sterile field to be organizing this type of format. So, and memorization and guesswork, while it gives best of class organization, based on old technology, it certainly isn't best of class organization based on what's possible and what's used every day in other industries. So we see this as an incredible opportunity to streamline teams, to superpower scrub techs, superpower circulating nurses, to improve inventory control, revenue management, billing, acquisition, SPD, tray organization and setup, the number of trays that are required for any given case, consumable management, waste of consumables, accounting of inventory for implants. All of these things are stressed because of old and ancient methods of accounting and ledgering. So with all of this being said, this was one of the pictures off of your social media feed in TORG that led to our first conversation. So I saw this and I was like, oh, this is an amazing example of the burden that a surgical team has when they know that a surgeon with this kind of a case walks into a room and expects everything to be relatively available for them to execute this unbelievably complicated surgery. So, I saw this picture and that's when I honestly reached out and started the conversation. And ultimately, it's the reason why I'm talking to you about all of this stuff today. But it's an incredibly extraordinary task for some person or team of persons to, deftly and efficiently and quickly organize something as complex as this. And it's amazing how well it's done considering the lack of organizational tools and principles that we start with. But by the same token, it was a challenge to us, given what we were trying to build and what we were inspired by, to come up with a methodology that could help streamline these problems and make it flow better. And even within the setup, you can literally stare at this and see phases of a case and a reference guide for how a case will flow and what you have first and what you need second and what you need third. And if you have multiple teams during one case, how different teams have different organizational profiles. And you can see this in this picture, but it's extremely hard to organize if you're a surgical team member who's never worked in this particular environment on this particular procedure with that team. And consequently, education is much more difficult than it should be. We talk about the racing. This slide is just simply a reminder. This is what I had the privilege of racing in 2 different Rolex course. And that's me in the Rolex 24 in 2019, where we had the privilege of succeeding at a high level in that race. But this inspired all of the subsequent production of our software applications. So this is an Escher print, sort of. It was an artificial intelligence rendition of an Escher print. I've always thought in flow forward, relentless downhill flow forward, always forward. And so we taught ChatGPT how to do a surgical OR that's always moving forward with throughput and with follow through and without roadblocks and without structure. And it became sort of this metaphor for how we wanted to tackle the problem of disorganization in surgical healthcare. So the initial mock-ups, and when we finally realized the problem we wanted to solve, where that we'll use software to create a visual metaverse, a visual surgical environment of all the tools, all the equipment, all the consumables, build out reference guides, build out sequences, build out the ability for surgical teams in action on the field in surgery to have immediate awareness, not only of what they're doing in real time, what systems they're using, technique guides for systems, but also what they're about to do. And if team members come and go, the next team member will know exactly where in a case they are and what the organizational map looks like at that moment in the case. And we were going to use this to help conjure up the architecture for the software, because ultimately it's still just software. The difference is, instead of making lists and writing paragraphs with software, we're creating holographic visual images that are transposed into a real environment where the team has immediate awareness of where things go, what the orientation of the room is, where's anesthesia, where's the microscope, where's the x-ray machine, where is cell saver, where is the back table, the Mayo stand, what's on the Mayo stand, what is the organization of the back table. Immediate visual cues that make it absolutely effortless to be maximally well organized and reduce the burden of starting new cases, preparing for new cases. Our goal isn't to make surgery faster. It's to eliminate waste of time and resource in surgery because of the chaos of the build out and the origination and the organization and the management of all the tools and things that we need to prepare for. So with that, we definitely have the feeling that artificial intelligence can optimize certain steps. And the way I want to use artificial intelligence is not as playing doctor or replacing staff or jeopardizing staff. On the contrary, we want to use it to superpower staff and make them more aware and faster and better capable to not only execute their job, but do it in a less stressful environment, in a more potent and powerful environment. And mixed reality, it's not about the fancy device. It's about being able to transpose visual software expression in a way that teams can use it to immediately negotiate complex surgical tasks and procedures. And with this kind of power, we definitely feel like we can improve the flow, the availability, the overall throughput of surgical performance. So ultimately creating a safe AI that builds on a database of tools and steps and best practices. Imagine a world where operative descriptions can be fed into an AI, which immediately creates a flow of written surgical steps where you can isolate tools and consumables and implants to various phases of the case on the surgical field, in the sterile field, in real time. Ultimately, being able to analyze it and look back at the data and learn best practices, and then use that as a perpetual optimization machine to improve best practices. The ultimate goal of all of this, and it's a little daunting at first expression because who's going to get it? There's no question as it starts, it's going to start in the more developed environments. But the goal is to expand capability and use ultimately worldwide and improve surgical flow, throughput, supply, education, and capability in an environment where all of these resources are progressively declining, not increasing. Gathering real-time data ultimately feeds back to the database. We're as good as the data. So, I think when you're talking about clinical diagnostics in AI, it gets a lot more complicated. When you're talking about organization of tools in surgery, it's much more analogous to how these technologies have been used in automotive and aviation and industry and warehousing and logistics. And so we see a direct and immediate parallel to surgical healthcare that really is lacking. This is a perfect example of, okay, how does this surgeon want his Mayo stand organized? What tool is next on the list? What is he about to need when he puts his hand out? All things that are designed to superpower the scrub tech and make them really, really have an immediate opportunity to know exactly what's about to happen. the reference guide. We're at the micro decompression. We're talking about bone work. We have holographic screens that reflect the microscopy digital monitor, and not by rotating your head 180 degrees backwards while you're trying to work forwards, but you can put it right in front of you, right next to the area where the surgeon is working or where the assistant is working. All of these things are possible right now, and it's just a matter of growth and expansion and development. And so, this particular group and the diversity of this group really gives us the opportunity, one, to listen, two, to project, and three, ultimately to, self-inspire so that we can stay on the right course and we can continue to build all of these ideals, which are so important to ultimately improve the surgical healthcare environment. This is a general reflection of what we're doing, a web portal which builds a holographic digital preference card, artificial intelligence to optimize procedural steps, an iOS tablet so that the circulating nurse can be a big part of the data capture and have an interface by which he or she can, engage that surgical field with the scrub tech who's managing a mixed reality environment where they're creating moments and opportunities with consumables and implants and tools and systems on the field. And that circulating nurse is back and forth in a digital format, something previously impossible. Data processing to learn from the experience and ultimately continue to improve the library, and then cycle repeat, always forward. Ultimately, optimized organization, maximized efficiency, increased workflow, less medical errors are all the goal. Superpowering teams is a foundational goal. All of this is really just an extension of our desire to always improve surgical implants, surgical procedures, surgical set design, taking a 22 tray system down to 1 tray. That improves SPD management. It improves throughput of tools and equipment. All of these things, again, we have singular goal: improve access to care, streamlining efficiency of care, affordability of care, ultimately globalization of care. This is an example of the point of view of our product right now. And this is seen through the eyes of my surgical tech through their HoloLens. Back to Dr. Roden, his most famous quote in neurosurgery circles is, "There is no finish line." This ties in brilliantly to Ayrton Senna's quote that I showed earlier about limitless. There is no limit. Once you get to a limit, you see a new limit. Passionately, I believe that we're all on a journey in surgical healthcare where we have substantial opportunity to continue to not only improve execution, organization, but also delivery of care in surgical healthcare. And these are the things that my lifetime is pledged towards. It's what I'm going to do until I can no longer. I thank you for all allowing me to share this with you and share some of my feelings and philosophies and inspiration. I see this group as having a big role in spreading the message of possibilities in surgical healthcare, because a grassroots kind of projection forward is really the only way that as a group of humans, we can all come together to push boundaries. Because right now, I think healthcare is too secular. It's too disconnected. Doctors don't communicate with nurses, who don't communicate with technicians, who don't communicate with institutional administrators and bureaucrats. And we really have to do this as a team. And we started with my comment about wanting to superpower teams. I want to finish with, we need to superpower teams. And this is our strategy forward. So thank you very much. That is the presentation. I'm open to any questions, whether it's spinal neurosurgery or AI, MR, our product, whatever. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Robert, for the good presentation. Where many things seems to be like dreams, to see artificial intelligence working in medical career, most especially in surgery. So I would like to welcome Idris to read this session for questions and answer. Are you there, Idris?
Good evening.
Good
Hello.
evening, Idris. Hello.
This is Idris, president from Nigeria, Lagos specifically. So I'll be anchoring the question and answer section.
I'm sorry, Idris, a question on what session?
Question and answer.
Okay.
Question and answer. Yeah. I think someone is raising up his hands.
Where do we? All right. Bimana,
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm so fine. How are you too?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the good presentation. I'm
You're welcome.
Anakredo Sayomana from Rwanda, and I'm the chairperson of TORG, Education and Training Committee. So I was happy for the good presentation, but during your presentation, you have presented where the turnover, specifically for experienced staff, is a worldwide problem. What can be the advice so that we can even prevent or decrease that turnover? Because when the turnover is there, it will lead to that disorganization in the surgery, that also lead to the surgical error. What can be the solution to decrease that turnover? Thank you.
I need to ask you to clarify. I'm having a hard time hearing a little bit. What type of something to improve the turnover of the surgery?
I guess it wants to know the turnover time, how to improve that in between cases, how to
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So right off the bat, like within the reference guide, there is the ability to get timestamps. Like right now, there's a data insight within our capability where you can immediately see stage 1 of the case was started and stopped in this time period. Stage 2, here to here. Stage 3, here to here. There will be a point, depending on the architecture of that flow of that case, where for any given surgeon, for that procedure, for them, like let's say it's arbitrarily 10 cases. Over 10 cases, what is the average time when that team is going to be X number of minutes from being finished? Right off the bat, there's an opportunity to know, okay, now it's time to start the next room, to open in the next room, to start preparing for the next team, to organize the staff, organize the resources, the opening of sterile equipment, things like that. The other aspect of it is predictive from a standpoint of, okay, these tools are no longer in use. So let's start SPD. If we have sterilizers, if we have cleaners for these tools, these things can go out now and we can start getting ready for that next case. And we can use the reference guide to prompt when the next set of tools, which were for the first half of the case, can already be prepared for the next case, first half of the case, and create more of a sequence rather than everything at once. You know, there's sort of a systemic tendency to backlog every piece of every aspect of every surgical case. And so one of the fundamental goals is to streamline it, much like a manufacturing plant streamlines, you know, assembly of computers in a company like Apple or Dell. It's not done, you know, all at once, front to back. It's done in a very progressive and organized and time-stamped and streamlined approach. So that's probably the most obvious way in micro expressions of each of those things. Needless to say, I consider part of the turnover, you know, usually the experienced rep is in the case with the surgical team, and another surgical tech who doesn't necessarily know the orientation or the organization is there. Well, a room being set up backwards or in a disorganized way leads to chaos and confusion. You know, sometimes the room has to be reset completely and completely flipped. Sometimes teams just struggle through what they arrive to. If the equipment is disorganized, it's hard to find things on the field. It's hard to quantify that any given case, but we all have been in enough cases to know when you're fumbling, you're distracted. When you're distracted, things are taking longer. You lose things, you drop things. There's just a sense of, wow, this is going incredibly well versus this is exceptionally chaotic. And so no question, we intend to improve best of class effortlessness. In my mind, and I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I'm obsessive about nonverbal communication and exceptional flow in my teams. And everybody knows exactly what's about to happen. And as a surgeon, I'm extremely aware that I'm obligated to have a ritual that is predictive in order to have the expectations that I have. But I like, in general, particularly when I train surgeons, I like to teach them to do the same kind of process, and that in doing so, they're improving their team's performance, because nobody responds well to a chaotic and angry surgeon, and there are a lot of angry and chaotic surgeons out there, and so I definitely think there's a process to minimizing that. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. And let me just ask this question. In the realm of neurosurgery, how can cutting-edge technology and innovative technical support ORT is effective to optimize surgical performance?
How can this next generation technology do what? I missed the last part. I'm sorry.
What I'm saying is this cutting edge in the approach for the neurosurgery, how can ORT in their effort to optimize surgical performance?
I just can't hear you well. I'm going to take my headset up. I'm sorry.
You can repeat the question. I think I'm finding it difficult to hear as well.
Okay. In the realm of surgery, how can cutting-edge technology and innovative techniques support ORT in their effort to optimize surgical performance?
Bottom line, I think these technologies with better organization, with better flow, they increase process. I don't know if anybody's familiar with how pilots work, but even the best pilots in the world use checklists for every phase of their case. Their pre-flight, their takeoff, at altitude, how to prime the engines, when they're going to descent, how to execute a descent. Memory works and you know what you're doing, but the best execution still works best with checklists. Manufacturing does this, so in surgery at large, the most obvious value is just the immediate realization of what's available and what's necessary to execute the next step, an orientation moment where you're reminded of where you are in a complex procedure. The more complex the procedure, the easier it is to get disoriented and to not really place yourself at this point where I know I'm going to need these few things, and it's easier to daydream. It's easier to be less focused. It's easy to be distracted. It's easy to, not recognize that a tool isn't even present or consumables aren't present. There's no question on the waste side of things. And I think this is a problem for developed and underdeveloped countries. Waste is massively expensive. And particularly if you're dealing with limited resources, you want to make sure that you use only what you absolutely need. And, I've led major departments in neurosurgery and spine surgery where, people speak in terms of millions of dollars US a year of waste just in consumables for one specialty, sometimes for one surgeon. And, needless to say, if supplies are limited or access to supplies financially are limited, that's untenable. So, whether it be an execution efficiency or a financial capability, or just flagrant waste, which the pandemic really showed, because a lot of supplies became unavailable in both developed and underdeveloped areas. And, you know, we have a lot of opportunity to be smarter about resource management.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Another question. How can neurosurgical teams effectively manage unexpected complications or challenges that may arise during complex procedures?
You know, in terms of complication management, something came up recently where people have asked, you know, can you put a reference guide edition for, like in spinal surgery, let's say you get a dural tear for a spinal fluid leak, and what do you need to repair that leak? It's not the plan, it's not the expectation, but it can be pretty chaotic in the moment. And sometimes the hardest time to organize a what if is in the heat of the moment. And so it's very easy for us to put in the event of a dural tear, have, you know, fibrin glue, have, you know, collagen sponges, have the ability to suture it up with this particular suture. You know, for example, you know, not dissimilar from malignant hyperthermia protocols or latex allergy protocols, and those can be included in there. So I think, you know, every surgery has inherent risk to that type of surgery, but it's very rare that the room is already prepared to handle those problems. And one of the biggest tenets in surgical education when you're teaching young surgeons is teaching them not to let the first problem turn into the second, third, and fourth. Well, when resources aren't available and when the calm management of those complications isn't executed correctly, it is very easy to cause problem number 2, 3, and 4. And suddenly a little problem becomes a really big problem, and it leads to secondary problems. And that is, you know, and obviously a really well-performing team and an experienced surgeon is less likely to fall into that trap. But again, you know, that's not always the case. And every team can benefit from best preparation for whatever happens. So again, organization at large, preparedness is foundational.
Okay, thank you. Adebsola, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for the answers and the questions. I just want to ask, how do we integrate this into African settings, and what's the cost implication of that?
You know, admittedly, it's a little early. I think, you know, we're a startup and we're still building we're about to start commercialization at large. So in that way, it's a little unfair and it's a little bit of a tease. On the other hand, there are a lot of foundations supporting these efforts. And I know that it would be pretty easy to put the right people together to start doing some test projects. And I think that would be exceptionally valuable, not only to the site, but more importantly to the opportunity. You know, for anybody who's working on NGOs and working on the charitable side of surgical mission projects, you know, organizing special interest groups that will fund these things is a critical part of the execution. You know, I'm spending 2 weeks in Nepal in December on a charity trip, and, you know, we have all sorts of problems that we're already navigating on how to get supplies in a way where the economic value of the supplies goes directly to the patient and not anywhere else. So those things have to be navigated, but that conversation, you know, in my mind starts now. So I invite any considerations. Ultimately, I think we have to get a little farther down the road, but these things sometimes take time. And from the way I look at it, you know, the first step is a step on a journey towards the eventuality. So this conversation is that first step.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, Mr. Idris. Oh, okay. That was very insightful. Thank you so much for making the time out of no time. I know it must be so hard, and you honored the invitation, even to come and speak to us as a group. We really want to say thank you and for sharing relevant knowledge, because it's very impressive what you've really done in terms of maximizing the efficiencies in the operating room environment, in terms of optimizing organizations, in terms of preventing medical errors. And I think even what expanded existing has done, what they've done, I think it's going to help the upcoming generations to know where they're going. Even for nurses, I know in TORG we have nurses more than any other category. The role of the scrub nurse, for example, is beyond minding trays. You should be able to contribute to the conversation as much as possible. And this generation, surgeons really want to know, they really want to have teams, people that know what they're doing, people that can anticipate the next steps, because that would not only save time, it would help with turnover, it would help a lot in terms of patient safety and other issues like that. And when we have new generations coming up, they can actually think outside the box and plan ahead of time and know what they're doing and help and contribute to the success of the surgery. So we really want to say, as a group, as an individual, I really want to say thank you so much for honoring this invitation. And as you've said, I know it's just the beginning, and possibly we could have a few teaching hospitals in certain countries, if they want to try that and see if they want test products, and just maybe one at a time, we can try that and introduce something. If a trial product is for tests, we can introduce that and organize that, and they can give it a try, bring it up at a meeting, and then recommend that based on the feedback from using the products on the first trial. I think if that is okay with you.
Yeah, no, I would love to have a conversation about that. And let me just throw this out as an example. Like the most easily available part of what we're doing doesn't involve the very expensive headset. It involves an iPad. And so we can specifically, with a local PC, to onboard a visual pref card using, we have a library of digital assets tools of 30,000 pieces. So a team there can literally create a digital holographic pref card and then have that transposed to the iOS app on the iPad. And that's the most affordable mechanism. That would be easy to do as a way to organize pref cards, to organize setup of the room for the scrub nurse, the circulating nurse. And it would not penetrate the sterile field for intraoperative management, but that's admittedly the most elite level of use, and not necessarily the most practical level of use. So I think from a pure organizational standpoint, that's the lane I would be talking about. And that is very affordable. I mean, it's not much more than existing PCs. And, from a charitable standpoint, the software, we can easily accommodate that in a variety of ways. So there's a lot to talk about, and when we're very creative. So
thank you so much for that. And one more thing, just before we round up, if we want to organize a trip, maybe as a group, to your spine institute, because I know I read that in your profiles when it was mentioned, like if we want to have hands-on practice in your spine from any country in the world, like as a group, if we want to send maybe 10 people to Florida, I think you're in Florida, if you want to send people, would you be able to facilitate that and give them all the requirements and maybe any access they need?
Yeah, we're in the process of, and this is something that organizationally we might do together. We have thought about a certification process for surgical team members, and Orlando is such a normal, natural place for people to travel for major conventions and educational things. So we've been thinking about different vehicles to do a surgical team member certification process for not only the software, but the new technology, the headsets, augmented mixed reality systems. So yeah, that would fall very much in line with that process. And so, yeah, there's a lot of potential to do that. And ideally, it would be leadership stakeholders that would be able to train. So it's train the trainer. I'm a big fan of train the trainer. And so that would be very valuable to just gently, gradually expand, universal knowledge in the area, because it's coming. And, best case scenario, 3 to 5 years overall. Sometimes it takes a decade, but it's coming. There's no question. And so, yeah, I'd be very interested in the educational piece.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. Once again, I really want to say thank you for honoring that invitation, for sharing relevant knowledge, for teaching us, showing us the way and introducing us to artificial intelligence and what the impact of mixed reality is in terms of neurosurgeries and micro neurosurgery as well. And I also want to use this opportunity to say thank you so much to everyone who registered for this session and who made it point of duty to attend as well and participate actively. And I want to say thank you to the members of the TORG Training and Education Committee, from the chairperson to the vice chairperson to the facilitator, that's Mr. Wilson, and everyone that attended as well from all the countries. I really want to say thank you so much. And hopefully in another 2 weeks, we're going to be having another session on sterile processing. I think that's the next phase at the moment, and we will see the flyers when they go out. And I really want to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. And if you have any other questions later on, even after this session is over, you can always send and we can pass it on to our speaker for today. And he's always happy to respond at any time. He's been responding actively. He's always happy to respond. And going forward, we're going to build on this knowledge, apply that to our practice, and see what we can do to actually move forward with the information we have received today. Thank you so much. I'm going to welcome the Education and Training Committee to end the session, if that's okay. Ms. Sadenike, you can, yeah, I think she's still connected.
Adenik? Hello?
She's probably working or something. Thank you so much, everyone. And this is where we're going to end the session. And any other comments, you can leave them on the open group and we will pass it on. Thanks a million. Bye, everyone. See you at the next. Thank you, Dr.
Let us call each other.
It's a privilege meeting you. Thank you.
Happy
Bye.
Sunday. Bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
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 Bye.